24 hours. That's all the time Marcus Whitfield had left. Dr. Reynolds stood in the sterile VIP suite of Cedar Heights Medical Center, his hands trembling as he delivered the impossible news to Richard Whitfield, the tech billionaire, whose fortune had built half of Silicon Valley. "Sorry, Mr. Whitfield, your son's organs are shutting down. We've exhausted every treatment protocol. The blood disorder is too aggressive, too rare, even with unlimited resources." His voice trailed off, unable to finish the cruelest sentence a doctor can speak. Richard's fist slammed against the wall, leaving a dent in the expensive paneling. "Don't tell me about limits. I have $3 billion. I can fly in any specialist from anywhere in the world, buy any experimental drug, build an entire research facility if I have to." His voice cracked on the last word, the veneer of control shattering. Elizabeth Whitfield sat motionless beside her son's bed, her manicured fingers intertwined with Marcus's small, pale hand. She hadn't spoken in hours. The mother who normally commanded boardrooms and charity galas had been reduced to silence by the one thing money couldn't fix. Dr. Reynolds pulled up Marcus's latest scans on the holographic display. "The hemolytic crisis is cascading faster than we predicted. His kidneys are failing, his liver enzymes are skyrocketing, and his bone marrow has essentially stopped producing healthy blood cells. We've tried plasmapheresis, immunosuppressants, even the experimental gene therapy from Switzerland." He paused, his professional composure crumbling. "Nothing is working." "What about a transplant?" Richard demanded, though he already knew the answer. "There isn't time. And his immune system is so compromised that rejection would be instantaneous." Dr. Reynolds removed his glasses, suddenly looking decades older. "I've consulted with 17 specialists across 3 continents today. They all agree we're out of options." But money had finally met its match. 9-year-old Marcus lay motionless in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped his fading life away, his small body losing a battle that wealth couldn't win. His breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of his chest a fragile victory against the inevitable. The VIP suite looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital room mahogany furniture. Original artwork, a private chef preparing organic meals that Marcus was too weak to eat. None of it mattered now. "Clear the entire floor." Richard commanded the hospital administrator who had rushed in with paperwork. "I want every other patient transferred. No distractions, no interruptions. My son deserves privacy in his final hours." His jaw clenched. "And double the security. No press, no staff, unless absolutely necessary. You understand?" The administrator nodded quickly and disappeared, already making calls. Outside, pressed against the rain-soaked service entrance 3 floors below, a skinny black boy with torn sneakers and a weathered backpack watched through the 3rd-floor window. Dante had been invisible to this world for the past 3 years, living in the shadows of the very hospital where his mother once worked before she died. He knew every corner, every schedule, every place to hide, through the rain-streaked glass. He could see the doctors shaking their heads. He could see the machines surrounding a small figure in the bed. And something deep in his chest tightened with recognition. Security guard. Rodriguez's flashlight beam cut through the darkness. "Not tonight, kid. Important people upstairs. Move along before I call the cops." Dante was used to this. For 3 years, since his mother died, Cedar Heights had been both sanctuary and prison. He slept in the loading dock when it rained, scavenged from the cafeteria dumpsters after midnight, and survived on the margins of a world that pretended he didn't exist. His mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, had been different. She'd been a researcher here once, brilliant and obsessed with her work on rare blood disorders and botanical compounds. The other doctors had called her eccentric, even crazy. When she insisted that ancient plant remedies held answers modern medicine couldn't find, then she got sick. Ironic, really. The healer who couldn't heal herself. After she died, the hospital cleared out her lab in 3 days. Everything went to the trash except one thing: her research journal, which 12-year-old Dante had hidden in his backpack. The pages were worn now, stained with rain and tears, but he'd memorized every word. Every sketch of leaves and roots, every chemical compound she'd documented. "I said move." Rodriguez grabbed Dante's arm roughly, but Dante's eyes remained fixed. On the third-floor window, the dying boy's skin had that same yellowish tint his mother had described. The way the machines clustered around him, the desperate movements of the medical staff, all matched a case study from page 47 of her journal, acute hemolytic syndrome, caused by a genetic mutation so rare that only 16 cases existed in medical literature. His mother had found something: a treatment protocol using a compound from an Amazonian plant. She'd been weeks away from clinical trials when the cancer took her. Dante's hand tightened around his backpack strap. That boy upstairs was dying from the exact condition his mother had solved. But who would listen to a homeless kid with a dead woman's notebook? Dante waited until Rodriguez's shift change at midnight. He'd watched the hospital's rhythms long enough to know every gap in their surveillance, every blind spot in their security cameras. The service elevator required a key card, but the laundry chute led to a maintenance corridor that connected to the main building. He squeezed through spaces that would make an adult claustrophobic. His thin frame an advantage for once. The backpack caught on a pipe, and for a heart-stopping moment, he thought he'd be stuck. But he twisted free and kept climbing. The third floor was eerily quiet. The entire wing had been cleared, just as he'd overheard. Outside Marcus's suite, 2 private security guards stood like sentinels. Through the door's window, Dante could see Dr. Reynolds checking monitors while Elizabeth sat motionless, and Richard paced like a caged animal. Dante's hand trembled as he knocked on the glass. The security guards turned immediately. "Hey! Did you?" The door swung open, and Richard Whitfield's face appeared, contorted with rage. "What the hell is this?" "I gave explicit instructions. No one disturbs us." "Mr. Whitfield, please." Dante's voice cracked. "I know what's wrong with your son. I can help get this street rat out of here." Richard roared. "Now wait." Dante pulled the journal from his backpack, pages falling open to his mother's detailed sketches. Acute hemolytic syndrome with cascade organ failure. That's what he has, right? "Look, my mother studied this exact condition." Richard's face purpled. "You think I'm going to take medical advice from a homeless kid with a notebook? My son is being treated by the best doctors in the world, and they're all telling you there's nothing they can do." Dante shot back, desperation making him bold. "'Cause they don't know about the compound. My mother found it. She documented everything. Security." Richard grabbed Dante's arm with bruising force. "I want him arrested for trespassing." "Richard, wait." Elizabeth's voice cut through the chaos. She'd stood up for the first time in hours, moving toward them with slow, deliberate steps. Her eyes, red from crying, fixed on Dante with an intensity that made him freeze. "What did you say your mother's name was?" "Dr. Sarah Chen. She worked here in the research wing. She died 3 years ago." Elizabeth's hand flew to her mouth. "Sarah Chen, the ethnobotanist." Dr. Reynolds looked up sharply from the monitors. "Chen, remember her? Brilliant researcher. She was working on alternative treatments for rare blood disorders before." He trailed off, the implication clear. "Before the hospital shut down. Her research and called her crazy," Dante finished bitterly. "She was 2 weeks from clinical trials. She told me the pharmaceutical companies didn't want her to succeed because her treatment couldn't be patented." Richard scoffed. "This is insane. You're going to trust our son's life to conspiracy theories from a dead researcher's kid." "But Elizabeth," was already reaching for the journal, her hands shaking. What does it say? What did she find?" Dante opened to page 47, where his mother's precise handwriting filled the margins. "Chrysobelanus amazonicus, a rare plant from the Amazon basin. It produces a compound that can reverse hemolytic cascade if administered within 36 hours of symptom onset." He looked up at the clock on the wall. How long has Marcus been critical? 22 hours, Dr. Reynolds whispered, moving closer to examine the journal. And there's still time, Dante said. But we have to move fast. Dr. Reynolds took the journal with careful hands, his eyes scanning the pages with growing astonishment. This is extraordinary. These molecular structures, the compound isolation process, Sarah was years ahead of her time. He looked up at Dante, but son, even if this is legitimate, where would we possibly find this plant? The Amazon basin is thousands of miles away. You don't have to go to the Amazon, Dante said, his voice steady now. My mother kept samples. She was growing them here in the hospital's research greenhouse on the roof, building sea level 7. She had a whole cultivation project before they shut her down. Richard shook his head violently. That was 3 years ago. It's nothing. Up there now? The greenhouse has been abandoned since the budget cuts. That's what everyone thinks. Dante met his eyes. But plants don't need permission to grow. My mom designed a self-sustaining ecosystem. Automated irrigation, climate control. That runs on solar backup. I've been checking on it. The chrysobalana specimens are still alive. Elizabeth's grip tightened on her son's hand. You've been living here all this time? You've been protecting your mother's work. Dante nodded, not trusting his voice. Dr. Reynolds was already on his phone, pulling up the hospital's facility maps. Building C, the old research wing. It's been locked down for years. We'd need administrative override codes? And he stopped, looking at Richard. Your company built the hospital's security system. Richard stood frozen, caught between his prejudice and his love for his son. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly. 22 hours and 17 minutes. Even if we get the plant, Richard said slowly, how do we know it will work? How do we know it won't kill him faster? Dante flipped through the journal to a section, marked with a yellow sticky note, worn from repeated handling. She tested it. Clinical trials on mice with induced hemolytic conditions. 97% survival rate. Then she moved to primate studies, 12 subjects, all successful. She was ready for human trials when the hospital board rejected her funding. His voice cracked. They said it was too experimental, too risky, that there wasn't enough profit potential. My God, Elizabeth whispered, reading over the doctor's shoulder. She documented everything. Dosages, administration protocols, potential side effects. This is a complete treatment plan. Dr. Reynolds straightened, his professional demeanor returning. If we're going to do this, we need to move now. Every minute counts. He turned to Richard. I can't make this decision for you. Kay, I can tell you that your son will die if we do nothing. This treatment, it's unorthodox, unapproved, and I could lose my license for administering it. But the science is sound. Sarah Chen was brilliant. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of Marcus's heart monitor. Each beat a reminder of time slipping away. Richard looked at his son's pale face, then at his wife's desperate eyes, and finally at the homeless boy holding a dead woman's dream. How do we get to the greenhouse? He asked quietly. Dante was already moving toward the door. Follow me. But we have to go through the maintenance tunnels. The main elevators to Building C are disabled. Elizabeth kicked off her heels. Let's go. They moved through the hospital like ghosts of Billionaire. His wife, a renowned doctor, and a homeless boy, united by a single desperate hope. Dante led them through passages he'd navigated hundreds of times, past sleeping security stations and through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and forgotten dreams. The greenhouse door was rusted shut. It took Richard's shoulder and Dr. Reynolds' weight combined to force it open. When they finally stumbled inside, they all stopped, breathless. The greenhouse was a jungle. Vines had overtaken the structural beams, creating a canopy that filtered the moonlight into green gold. Shadows. The air was thick and humid, alive with the scent of earth and growing things. In the center, exactly where Dante had said it would be, stood a small tree with distinctive oval leaves and delicate white flowers. Chrysobelanus amazonicus, mother's miracle. Dr. Reynolds worked with hands that had performed thousands of procedures, but never one like this. He carefully extracted the compound from the plant's bark and leaves, following Sarah Chen's precise instructions as if she were standing beside him, guiding every movement. "The dosage has to be exact, Dante," said, reading from the journal. "A little won't stop the cascade. Too much will cause acute toxicity." Elizabeth held Marcus's hand as Dr. Reynolds administered the pale green liquid through the four. The room fell silent, except for the monitors. Richard stood frozen, his earlier arrogance replaced by raw fear. Nothing happened for 3 minutes. Then 5, then 10. "It's not working," Richard whispered, his voice breaking. But Dante was watching the monitors. "Wait. Look at his oxygen saturation." The numbers were climbing. Slowly at first, then faster. "His kidney function is responding." Dr. Reynolds breathed, staring at the display in disbelief. "The hemolysis is stopping. My God, it's actually reversing." Elizabeth's sob filled the room as Marcus's eyes opened for the first time in 24 hours. "Mom?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. Richard dropped to his knees beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." Over the next 72 hours, Marcus made a recovery that the medical staff called miraculous. His organs stabilized, his blood counts normalized, and the death sentence that had hung over him evaporated like morning mist. Richard Whitfield stood in his son's hospital room, no longer a VIP suite, but a regular room by his own request, and looked at the homeless boy who had saved everything he loved. "I was wrong about you," Richard said quietly. "About everything. I let money and status blind me to what really matters." He paused. "Your mother's work deserves to be recognized. Her research could save countless lives." Within 3 months, the Whitfield Foundation established the Dr. Sarah Chen Research Institute, dedicated to exploring ethnobotanical treatments for rare diseases. Dante became its youngest research fellow, given a full scholarship to study medicine while honoring his mother's legacy. The treatment protocol was shared freely with hospitals worldwide. No patents, no profit margins, just healing. Marcus and Dante became inseparable friends. 2 boys from different worlds, bound by the miracle that saved one life and gave meaning to another. On the anniversary of that desperate night, they stood together in the restored greenhouse, now a thriving research facility. The Chrysobelanus tree had been carefully propagated, its miracle spreading to patients across the globe. "Your mom was a hero," Marcus said. Dante smiled, touching the leaves his mother had once tended. "She taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in lives touched, knowledge shared, and hope given to those who need it most. Sometimes the answer to our prayers comes from the most unexpected places." If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that every person has value, regardless of their circumstances. Subscribe for more inspiring, true stories that prove miracles happen when we open our hearts.